Restrictions are ramping up in a big way because of the pandemic. President Donald Trump is shutting down all travel between the United States and Mexico that's not critical. Both countries are agreeing to the closure. Caught in the middle are migrants who are trying to cross over. Joining us now is immigration attorney Steve Maggi.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, President Trump announced earlier that he will restrict all non-essential travel across the border. What does this mean for the asylum process and what will change?
What it means is that essentially there will be no asylum petitions that are started on the Mexican side of the border for now. Right now, all foreign nationals who want to apply for asylum at the border legally have to do it at what are called ports of entry, which are any of those 48 legal crossing points to get into the United States. And they have already had a backlog on their interviews for months, but now essentially they won't be able to apply, which means they're stuck in these ad hoc camps that exist all along the border there, or in those cities that are outside of those border crossings, and in very squalid and dangerous conditions.
Yeah, so what will happen to the immigrants that are currently detained?
Well, it's actually a misnomer that they're being detained. The people that are detained are actually in detention facilities in the U.S., which has its own series of problems with regards to the virus. But in actuality, there's a program that started last year in January between the U.S. and Mexico really is not complying with that program in terms of actually taking care of those migrants who are returned essentially to Mexico. It's called Remain in Mexico. That's the name of the program. And they're actually not being protected or taken care of by the Mexican government, which means you have these ad hoc, impromptu facilities that are really people that are organizing it, nonprofits that are coming in to build tents and shelter for people or providing food, but the Mexican government's not actually putting in anything into this program. So they're not protected, and they're all communally living, which means they're at great risk of contracting the virus if anyone gets it.
Right. And there's been uproar lately as ICE agents are continuing arrests, even as lockdowns and quarantines are taking place to stop the spread of the virus. Some people are saying this is especially cruel because kids are home from school. Should ICE be holding off on detaining illegal immigrants?
It's the government's mandate, and unfortunately, they're doing their job if they're arresting people, if they're told to. Right now, because of the border essentially being closed as of midnight, they are instructed to return anybody who crosses the border. And the majority of people who are doing this right now are women and children that are not from Mexico, that are at risk essentially of losing their livelihood, or that were at risk of being killed or kidnapped or tortured in their home countries, which are really Central American countries, not Mexico. And so there's this game of hot potato now between Mexico and the U.S., where the U.S., as of last year, doesn't want non-Mexicans who cross through the border between the U.S. and Mexico to remain in the U.S. to be processed. And now the Mexican president said today that he will not be accepting those migrants that are returned by the U.S. government as of right now, which means essentially the migrants are in this gray area now where if they've crossed over in the past week, there's no way to know what can be done with them. And the U.S. government might try to return them to the border, and the Mexican government might say, we're not taking you. If you can imagine what that would lead to.
What are the immigrants you work with saying to you about the pandemic? Are they scared for their future? Are they worried more about the coronavirus or being thrown out of the country?
Right now, the main concern is the coronavirus. And that's, if you look at the New York City area, for example, the majority of workers in the service industry are undocumented illegal aliens who really are the backbone of our economy. They're the ones that are losing their jobs first. And a lot of them in the New York City area are living in difficult conditions with many people. And they're also at a greater risk of having this, being spread and being contaminated or being, infected. And so I think that's their primary concern right now is health.
All right. Immigration attorney Steve Maggi, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
In Italy, people have been told